Once there was a man named Moses. One day, while watching his sheep, he discovered something very unusual. It was a bush that started burning for no reason at all, and it wasn't burning up. Moses decided to walk closer to the bush to check out what he saw when he discovered that God was using the bush to get his attention. God spoke to Moses from the bush, and he said, "Moses, the people in Egypt are very sad. The mean King Pharaoh is treating my people very poorly. He's making them work hard and giving them very little in return. I want you to talk to the king and tell him to let my people leave his land. I want you to be the one who helps lead them to a new and better land that I promise I will lead you to." Moses didn't want to talk to the king. "No," he said, "please send someone else." But God had made up his mind. "I have chosen you, Moses. Don't be afraid. I will be with you, and I will help you. I will care for you. Now go." Moses obeyed God and set off to find King Pharaoh. When Moses reached the king, he told the king what God had said. He told the king that God had sent him to lead the Israelites out of the king's land and asked the king let God's people go. The king thought it over and decided that it would be a foolish thing for him to let the people who worked for him leave. But Moses told the king that God had demanded him to let the people go. Again, the king thought it over and finally agreed to let God's people leave. So Moses shared the good news with the Israelites. He told them that he would lead them to a new land, a land that God had promised would be so much better than the land that they were living in under King Pharaoh. The people were very excited to leave. Now they would be free from the mean king. Moses led the people for months and months through the hot desert. At first, everything was going well. God showed Moses where to go, and the people followed. But then they ran into a serious problem. In front of them was a sea they could not cross. The people became angry at Moses, for they thought that they would no longer be able to escape from the mean king. But Moses told them that God cared for them. He would help them. And Moses prayed to God to ask what to do next. God didn't let the people down. He told Moses to stretch his staff high above the water. And when Moses obeyed, God did a miracle. He made such a wind that it blew the ocean right in half down the middle. The people were able to cross right through the middle of the ocean. There was water on each side of them, but dry land where they walked. The people quickly crossed the sea, for they later discovered that the king had sent an army to bring them back to his land. Once the people were safely across, God told Moses to lower his staff, and God sent the waters crashing back down, making it impossible for the king's army to bring God's people back to the king. Again, the Israelites were happy. They saw how God had cared for them. And again, they followed Moses across the desert. They walked and walked for days and days, but then they ran into another serious problem. The Israelites discovered that they were in the middle of the desert and were quickly running out of food. They knew that if they didn't have enough food, they'd die. Again, they complained to Moses. "Moses, we're running out of food. Without food, we will die. We were better off back in Egypt with a king. At least there we had food to eat." But Moses reminded the people that God was with them and was caring for them. He began to pray and asked for God's help. "Dear God," he said, "I trust you. I know you care for us. Please help us find food to eat." That night, God performed another miracle. While the Israelites were sleeping, God rained food from heaven called manna. Manna was like honey bread, and God would make sure that the Israelites would have plenty of manna to eat. God also sent a bird called quail that could be eaten by the Israelites whenever they became hungry. The people who trusted in God did not grow hungry on their long journey. God provided everything they needed for the trip because He cared for them. And God cares for you too. There's one thing we can be sure of. God cares for us. He will always provide those who trust Him the things that they need.